Mr. Moderator, Gurmit, Gobind, Ram Karpal, Sangeet, and other members of the Karpal family, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I thank the organizers of tonight's forum for the singular honor of inviting me to pay tribute to my friend and fellow member of the bar, the late Karpal Singh, who left us in the most tragic of circumstances a decade ago. The people of Malaysia and the nation miss him. Imagine what a better nation we would have had since 2014 if Karpal had continued to act as the conscience of the nation. Karpal was among the most courageous lawyers in our history and among the most principled politicians. I propose to share some of our interactions over nearly 40 years. I shall then consider his legacy as a lawyer and politician. So first, the Karpal I knew. Karpal was already well known in the bar in 1976 when I started. He was friendly to fellow lawyers, and I recall passing pleasantries with him in the corridors of the court. In 1977, I had the good fortune of listening to Karpal make a fiery speech at the bar AGM while moving a motion calling on all lawyers to boycott trials brought under the very unfair SCAR legislation. The resolution was carried with overwhelming majority and became binding on all lawyers. In response, the government caused the passing by Parliament of amendments to the Legal Profession Act. The result was the introduction of the infamous 7-year rule, the 1/5 quorum, and the prohibition of MPs to serve on the Bar Council. I don't believe Karpal ever attended another general meeting of the bar to our loss. Now, a few of the interactions. The only case I had against Karpal was when I acted for Exxon in a defamation case, and he represented Kit Siang. And I can say that he was a very easy opponent to have, and we very quickly settled the case, despite me having a very difficult client. Then, when I was the editor of Insaf in 1986, along with two lawyers, two members of the editorial committee, we interviewed the late Karpal and the late Sri Ram because we wanted to have an insight into the law of criminal law and the practice of criminal law. So even then, 40 years ago, Ram and Karpal were the outstanding members in the criminal bar. And that long interview was published in the Insaf of September 1986 and republished in Malaysia Kini last February after Sri Ram had passed away. And in that was a fabulous interview because we spent about 3-4 hours over a long day with the two of them. But I can assure you the most exciting event that occurred in my career involved Kit Siang and Karpal in the UEM case before the Supreme Court. And this requires a 1-minute story. Operation Lalang occurred in October 1987, which resulted in the litigant Lim Kit Siang and his lawyer Karpal Singh being detained. And the federal court then fixed the case for hearing. So you don't have a litigant and you don't have a lawyer. So KC Chia, the late KC Chia, came to see me and said, would I act for the client was Kit Siang? So I said, I can, but let me go and see. So we got permission. I was one of the few exceptions in our history. In the 60-day period, I managed to see Lim Kit Siang because I said, I must see my client. I saw Kit Siang. He said, yes, you can act. And then, so that was fine. And then when the case was fixed months later, I got permission and I went to see Kit Siang in Kamunting. And when Kit Siang was in Kamunting, we orchestrated the whole thing. And I said, look, Kit, I think Karpal should argue this case. And we must organize in such a way that Karpal will argue it. So Kit Siang said, can you do it? I said, of course we can do it. So as a result, I got Kit Siang's letter. He's the litigant. Then I rushed off to see Karpal, who was in the typing hospital. And he was thrilled. He said, you think can do it? I said, can be done. And so nobody knew about it, not even KC Chia. And when the case was called up for hearing in a 5-man panel with Saleh Abbas and Yusofi in particular in charge, and I stood up and I said, actually, I'm here only to ask for an adjournment. I need Karpal Singh. So, of course, the Attorney General then, Abu Talib, was bellowing. The court said, okay, we'll have a break. And Yusofi Abdul Qadir took over and said, look, why can't, what Tommy says is fair. If Kit Siang wants Karpal, you have to have him. And Kit Siang doesn't want Tommy Thomas. That's what he says. So it was all arranged. And as a result, Karpal then, the case was fixed to suit Karpal. Of course, you didn't have to worry about Karpal's court schedule. He had a free diary. He came to, and he had back problem, and he was in GH, Kuala Lumpur. So I went to KCCHI and I went to see Karpal to give him the books and all that. And Karpal was very nice. He said, "Come, please join the legal team." And I said, "No, Karpal, I am not going to join the legal team. You are the star there." So that was the real story behind the law reported case. When you read the law reported case, it's boring. My name is not mentioned, and there is no drama behind. Which is, as a result of that, I saw Kit Siang twice, and I saw Karpal twice, when they were in the ISA detention. So that was exciting. Then Karpal acted for me when I was sued by VK Lingam and 2 other companies for defamation arising out of the Ayar Molek and EAC cases. He was a wonderful lawyer, and of course, he did it free of charge. And then finally, my last important encounter with Karpal was in the run-up to the 2013 general election. I inquired from him when there was a real hope that there was going to be a change of government. But we were one election wrong. I went to see him and to ask him whether he wanted to be a cabinet member, or home minister, or anything in government, including wanting to be attorney general or whatever, because he was the right candidate. But Karpal was very adamant. He says, "No such thing. I'm going to stay on the back bench, and I'll make sure that my DAP colleagues behave, and I will be the first to scold them publicly." So that was Karpal. And of course, we know that's exactly what Kit did in 2018. Now I come to Karpal's legacy as a lawyer. And can I start by quoting a famous passage by Thomas Erskine, an English barrister who said this 200 years ago in 1847. And I quote, "I will forever, at all hazards, assert the dignity, independence, and integrity of the English bar, without which impartial justice, the most valuable part of the English Constitution, can have no existence. From the moment that any advocate can be permitted to say that he will or will not stand between the crown and the subject arraigned in the court where he daily sits to practice, from that moment the liberties of England are at an end." Now that inspiring statement epitomizes the legal obligations of all lawyers who appear in court, only those who go to court. You can call them counsel, barristers, advocates, attorneys, whatever you want to call them. And we are obliged to accept briefs from any client in the area you practice, so that unpopular clients and unpopular causes have their day in court, what is known as the cab rank doctrine. Now, no one exemplified this important practical principle than Karpal. Anyone in trouble with the overpowerful state and its numerous agencies and statutory authorities could engage the services of Karpal, often without fee, that is pro bono, or at an affordable fee. And of course, his most famous client was perhaps Anwar Ibrahim. Thus, Karpal's specializations were criminal law and public law, subjects which have the state as the adversary. His clients and their families, that is, Karpal's clients and their families would be assured that they were in safe hands at all times. Karpal was well prepared, vigorous in cross-examination, and theatrical and dramatic when the occasion demanded it. He always gave his best. Karpal's reputation preceded him. Hence, he was charismatic in an unusual way. He was not flamboyant. In fact, he was shy with strangers. He did not indulge in small talk. Yet he commanded a presence. Judges, opposing counsel, court staff, and witnesses gave him the utmost respect. Karpal certainly had the ears of the judges he appeared before. So I would say that Karpal's greatest legacy was as the defender of the marginalized, something that Shah has already mentioned, the oppressed and victims of bureaucracy. So Karpal was the fighter against injustice par excellence. At a personal level, he had a splendid sense of humor. He was fun to be with, so he wasn't just all serious. What was not so well known was how hard Karpal worked. He combined the demands of an MP, the leader of a political party, a family man, and most importantly, the legal profession. Karpal was an incredibly industrious lawyer. He would be in multiple courts every day in the week. One would often see Karpal's name, and this is a true story, many times happened, one would often see Karpal's name mentioned in the papers as appearing in Penang, KL, and JB on the same day. So when I teased him about it, he would modestly remark they were brief appearances and he took flights. But still, the stamina of a man doing 3 courts in one day. And of course, picked up by the newspapers. The journalists loved him. Now, upon his return to the office after 5 p.m., there will be a large crowd of clients and admirers awaiting him. The office reception in Jalan Pudu resembled a bus station. Around 9 p.m., his dutiful wife Gurmit would bring dinner. Please do not ask when he prepared his cases. That routine would continue week in and week out. I wonder whether he ever took holidays. Now, he appeared in thousands of cases and has hundreds of reported cases. I shall just mention 4. They're all constitutional cases. I just mentioned them. I don't want to bore the non-lawyers here. In 1930, the Chief Justice of the United States, Charles Hugh, remarked, "We are under a constitution, but the constitution is what the judges say it is," unquote. In order for the court to hear and decide on a constitutional case, it is essential to have brave litigants and parties, and more importantly, brave lawyers. And none were braver than Karpal. So I keep emphasizing his courage and bravery, because that, I'm sorry to say, in the bar of 22,000 that we have today, is a rare commodity. We are having too many scared lawyers, I'm sad to say. I'll just mention the 3-4 cases. The case called Tan Bun Liat, which related to preventive detention. A case called Lau Ki Ho, which he was quite early in 1983. He asked the court to say that the mandatory death penalty should be held unconstitutional. Of course, the court said no. Then in a case called Juraimi and Hussein, he challenged the Pardons Board decision, and again he was unsuccessful. But the most important case, and that's one case I want to just mention, and somebody had already mentioned it. This is Tay Cheng Po and the public prosecutor, a 1979 constitutional case, which I often, in nearly every case in a public law case I have it in my bundle. Karpal is an elite member of an elite class of Malaysian lawyers. From the history of our lawyers appearing in the Privy Council, which is, not only did he turn up in the Privy Council, he argued the appeal himself. He appeared alone in the Privy Council on behalf of Tay Cheng Po before 5 law lords, one of whom is Lord Diplock, who was a real bully and an intellectual giant, and Karpal obviously took him on. He had a QC against him on behalf of the Malaysian government. And this is one of the most important constitutional cases. And there's no doubt in my mind that Karpal's contribution, as he was the only local counsel before the Privy Council, and it's a very learned judgment, of course, delivered by a great judge, but there's no doubt in my mind that Karpal's contribution as counsel was first rate. And then I come very quickly to his role as a politician. Karpal was perhaps the most famous in his questioning of ministers in the Dewan Rakyat, which resulted in his repeated expulsions. And I would, of course, tease him and say, "Karpal, I know you had an important case, you didn't want to go to Parliament." And he will not deny it, he will smile. So I was a bit cynical about Karpal being kicked out from Parliament. He adamantly opposed any claim that Malaysia is an Islamic state, as wrongly declared by Prime Minister Dr. M in 2001, and a subject that keeps recurring all the time. And if Karpal were here, I assure you Karpal would be in the forefront of the argument to correct people in his brave, principled way. Karpal believed in the secular common law system underpinned by the supremacy of the Constitution, while respecting the proper place for Sharia law in our plural society. He vehemently opposed race-based political parties. Karpal was an epic fighter of corruption. Indeed, in one of my last conversations with Karpal, and I think it's 2013, 2014, I can't remember, because he passed away, of course, in April 14, we chatted about the developing story of 1MDB, Najib, and Jolo. And that is a subject that I was very interested in, and Karpal and I spent about 5 minutes chatting about it, and he was curious to know what these rogues were doing. But his instinct was absolutely correct. He said, "These are all rogues and they're stealing." And I said, "Karpal, you're absolutely right." So I come to my end, 15 minutes. Karpal was a legend in his lifetime. He was a larger-than-life personality. Malaysia is a better place because of Karpal. His bountiful contributions to our public life must be recorded for posterity. I hope the current PH-led government, members of whom were his comrades in arms during decades of opposition, and some are here, will take urgent steps to give Karpal the appropriate historical recognition before historical revision comes into play down the road. I salute my friend Karpal as special and sui generis. There will never be another Karpal. He was indeed a national treasure. May his soul rest in eternal peace.